Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Bodybuilding Business, the business of bodybuilding. We've got our fellow members, Justin Harris, Joe Seaman, all the way up in Canada. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, share it. We're trying to do as many topics as we can, cover bodybuilding from a business aspect, but also a little bit of drama, a little bit of fun stuff. So make sure you guys follow along, and hopefully we do a decent job. So what's up, guys?
What's up? So I think our business.
What's going on? What's going on?
I think our business topic for the week is well. So if you're in the sport, we talked about it in the first episode. The days of getting a weeder contract, having them pay you to do nothing but work out are gone. But there's more money in the sport than there's ever been. So if you're if you can go through a contest prep, you can do anything, and so you can apply these things outside of bodybuilding. And so today we're going to talk about commercial real estate. And if you've ever heard kind of a funny thing, if you remember when Donald Trump said he only paid, they showed he only paid $750 in income tax, and people think that's insane, Well, he's in real estate, so
everyone freaked out about it.
But he's in real estate, so he doesn't pay income. He doesn't get an income. So people say, that doesn't make sense to most people. So I'll kind of explain how with commercial real estate you don't really get an income, and you don't even want an income. And the reason you don't want an income is as soon as you make an income, you pay taxes on it. So you think, well, how do I have money if I don't make an income? Well, there's like phantom income with commercial real estate. So let's say you buy a car wash for $500,000. Right now, people think, I don't have $500,000. Well, you don't need $500,000. You need 20% of that. The bank has the rest of the money, and then the people that use your car wash pay your mortgage, which is that.
So if we go to the bank, Justin, and if someone's like, hey, I want to do a car wash, whatever it is. We've got to apply for, pretty much you're saying apply for a loan through the bank?
Well, yeah, it's the same thing. It's very similar to applying for a home loan, Now, you get a home loan, it's usually a 30-year loan with really low interest rates. Commercial property loans are different. They're typically 15 years or less, and they're a higher interest rate. Mm-hmm. But you don't pay the loan. The people who use your car wash, or the people who rent your storage units, or the people who rent your rental property, they pay the loan for you.
Are paying on the loan.
So you don't pay $500,000 to buy a car wash. You pay 20% of that. You pay, which is still a lot of money. So this might be a bad example, but even then, you can get hard money lending. You can get private funding, private lending. There's lots of people who specialize in that. Venture capital firms. If you got anyone with money in your family, but regardless, that you're not buying $500,000 property. You're buying 20% of that. And then after that, why do you not want an income? So I'll give an example. I'll do an easier one, a storage unit example, because they're very simple. Storage units, people rent out a storage unit.
So if you're buying up multiple storage units where people can store their stuff.
Stores, remember that on TLC or whatever. So let's say you buy one of those, and let's say you pay $250,000 for it, which means you need 20% of that down, which is like $40,000, $45,000. So that's what you have to have, which if you own a home, you can refinance your home, pull that equity out, then you have the money for it. So you've actually spent $0 down. And so you think, well, I don't make any income. Why is this worth anything? So if you have, say, your mortgage is $3,000 a month and you get $3,500 a month in rental income, you're only making $500 a month or $6,000 a year, which seems like a waste of time. But that $3,500 a month, or $3,000 a month rental income that your renters are paying are basically investing that money for you, because that's going into the property, and that property is appreciating in value. And so in 5 years, that $200,000 or $250,000 small little storage unit property, you will have paid down about $150,000 of it. So now there's only $100,000 due on it, but property appreciates, and right now property's skyrocketing. If you've ever seen home prices right now, they're outrageous, and storage units are no different. Commercial property is no different. So what happens at that point is you can get it reappraised, and it might be worth $350,000 or $400,000. So you've only made $5,000 a year actual income, which $6,000 a year actual income, which sounds like it's not worth anything. But in 5 years, that property is worth $500,000. You've made $250,000 on the appreciation. And then on top of that, your renters have paid down $150,000 of the property. So you paid $400,000 just by owning it, using essentially none of your money. And that's why you don't want income, because if you make the income, you actually have to pay taxes on it. So what you get is
Now let's say,
go ahead.
do you ever, just cut you off for 1 second to bring it back? You know, if any of the viewers got lost a little bit, but do you think that after a certain amount of time, after you've made money back on it, and you know property appreciates, do you think you should sell it? Should you hold on to it and buy a new one? Well, should you go into something completely different, like diversify?
Yeah, well, there's different thoughts. If you just want, the thing is, when that money is dead, I mean, it's illiquid. It's there, and so if you pay off that property, you actually don't want to pay off properties, you know, unless you're ready to sell them, because when you pay them off, that money just sits there. It's like having $250,000 in your bank or $500,000 in your bank, only you can't take it out of the bank, because to take it out, you have to sell the property. So one standard process, if you want to get into commercial real estate, is you get the first property, and then you let the renters, or you let the users of your car wash, or the renters of your home, or the renters of your apartment, or the renters of your storage units pay down the principal on the mortgage until you get about 20% of it paid down. Then you get it reappraised, which typically will increase in value by 20%, and you've paid 20% of it off. So now 40% of that value of the property is your cash, which you can then refinance, get a new mortgage on the property, pull out that 40%, and now you have 20% on 2 new properties. So you get 2 new properties that you pay $0 for. And even more so, you think you get no income. So, you know, this is like an investment idea. So we're growing. At some point, we're going to sell these properties for money. Well, what do I do right now if I need cash? You know, I need an income. Well, when you own a business, you get obviously write-offs. So if you have a truck, you know, it's a work truck. If you need to buy tools, they're work tools. There's a lot of things that you need for the property. Just because you need them for the property doesn't, you know, if I need bolt cutters for the storage units, it doesn't mean I can't use bolt cutters at home. So they are tools that they help kind of things that you don't then have to buy for your personal self. But on top of that, you get something that's called like phantom income, which is depreciation. So anything you have, and this is, if you're in the gym business, this is huge. Gym depreciation is huge because all your equipment breaks down. So you buy $100,000 in equipment. In 2 years, it's not worth $100,000 anymore. It's only worth $50,000. So you get to write that $50,000 off. And what that means is that's $50,000 in taxes you don't have to pay, which is the same as making that $50,000. So
it's important to pay attention to things that depreciate on your business and other aspects that you could potentially write off.
And a good accountant will do this for you, but it's really you need to learn it for yourself, because if you're relying on other people to handle this stuff for you, you're going to get screwed, or they're going to worry about their best interest. But that's really why, you know, because I didn't grow up with money. I didn't know. All I knew was I knew you got a job, and if you got a good job, you got a higher income. And so you hear things like these. Like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if anyone's ever heard of him, he always talks about he doesn't pay income taxes because he doesn't make any income. And you think, well, how do you have money if you don't make any income? Well, income's just one type of money, and it's the worst type of money, because the second you make it, the government takes 30 or 40% of it. So you really, you need some cash flow, you need some income so you can pay your bills and stuff. But beyond that, you don't want income, because you lose 30% of it the second you make it. So things like that phantom income with depreciation is basically income that's tax-free. Your write-offs are basically income that's tax-free. And then the appreciation of the property, like I said, so kind of a standard protocol. And I'm not like, I have a couple real commercial, we own a car wash, and we own 46 storage units. So I'm not, that's in a couple buildings, not like 46 separate properties. We own a couple buildings with 46 separate units, I guess. But so I'm not an expert by any means, but these are things I didn't know at all. And so I'll actually tell the story about how we got our first storage unit. So my wife's a dentist. I graduated with my master's in physics, and I got my first job as an engineer, making good money, and I was coaching. And so we were like, after, struggling forever, because we both went to a private undergrad that we then didn't use our degree for, and then both went to a second undergrad, and then both went to grad school. So we had, mountains of student loan debt.
Yeah.
So we're finally making good money. We go on our first vacation. My oldest daughter's 12. So this is our first adult vacation in at least 12 years. We go to Cancun, this all-inclusive resort. And there's this dude with a Pabst Blue Ribbon hat and a Fu Manchu, just drinking, drinking Bud Reds in the pool with his
some Bud Heavies.
Oh yeah, with just his rhinoceros of a wife, just snorting and fussing and stomping through the pool. They're having.
You're gonna get canceled, bro. You gotta be careful. You get canceled.
Yeah. But they're having a riot, and so I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy. What is it? This is an expensive resort. And so I asked
Yeah.
this guy, you know, like, hey, what do you do for a living? He's like, oh, I own storage units. And I'm like, you know, what? He's like, yeah, I own 150 units in Texas. So I kind of asked him how he got started, you know, and he got started. He put someone that owned like 9 units or something. He was struggling for money, so he put it on a credit card for $9,000, got some return, and then just kind of expanded it. So we got home, and as soon as I went to work, the first thing I did on Monday morning was look for storage units for sale. And if anyone's looking for storage units for sale, they don't go for sale ever. You know, you can look on LoopNet right now, and there's like 9 properties in America for sale. Just if you own storage units, you own it for the rest of your life because they just make money. It's mailbox money. You never do anything. People just pay with a credit card, and money just goes in your account. It's like free money. Well, but luck would have it, there was an auction for storage units ending in 2 weeks, 20 minutes from my home. I mean, just a miracle, you know. And so we had been saving for a down payment on a home, and so, you know, I was like, well, you know, this could be our chance. And so my wife and I kind of had a talk, like, mate, well, this is the time, you know, we'll look back at this as the time we, you know, like, we really changed our financial situation. And so we went in on it. We won the auction. We, you know, used all our down payment for a home, for the down payment on that. And a year into it, we found out we made $12,000. Wait, $9,000. And we were like, ugh, you know, oh my God, like, what a waste. All that money, you know, like $250,000. I mean, again.
So we're talking $250,000 you put down.
No, we put like $40,000. It was like 220 for the property. Yeah, it was a great deal because the property was worth more than that. But in my mind, still, I was thinking like 220 down. Now, you know, because the bank pays that. We don't. We get the loan for it.
Yeah.
We just pay the down payment. And so we're stressing, thinking this was a terrible decision. All this money, we put $40,000 down. The first year, we made $9,000. Thought, you know, this is a disaster. But then we realized with all the write-offs, because we didn't have any of the tools, we didn't have any of the equipment, any of the things you need to run that. Well, so we buy all these things, and that ended up being almost like $17,000 or $20,000. So it's like, well, that's really like making $20,000 more dollars. And then we do our taxes, and we realize the appreciation, and we make more money. And we own it for a couple of years. And this is when we started looking for a car wash. And I see a car wash I want to buy, and the same thing. It's like, oh God, we can't afford that. You know, car wash is like $500,000. We don't have the money for that. We don't even have the down payment for that. So I thought, well, let's get the storage units appraised again. Well, the storage units appraised again for $365. So now we've owned them for 2 years. We bought them for $220. We only paid $40,000. So we're $40,000 into it. Now they're worth $365,000. But
how much money you made? Like
even more, we only owed $131 on it at that point. So we made, you know, what is that, $135,000 just by owning it in a little under 2 years. It's like, you know, so basically we had a 6-figure income from owning this. If you do the actual, like the $90,000 you make, the $20,000 write off, another you know, $12,000 in depreciation.
So you had to thank that guy at the pool. You had to pay.
Like if you don't grow up, you know, like I lived in a trailer when I was a kid. My parents were awesome. My dad was a pipe. Neither went to college at first. My dad was a pipe fitter. When I was older, my mom went back to college and became a nurse and did very well for herself. He did very well for himself also. Eventually, like kind of owning his own business as a salesman. But I didn't know about any of this, and so I was just always thought, like, you know, if I ever had a chance to talk about this, because it's, you know, like you don't even realize. So basically, the long and short of it is that first year we thought we made $9,000, but it turns out when it's all said and done, you're making basically a 6-figure salary that the bank is paying your money. The bank gives you the money, the renters pay your mortgage, and then the fact that things just get more expensive over time, and real estate property is always increasing in value, earns your money for you.
Yeah. So let's say Joe and I were like, hey, dude, you know, do you think? I mean, a lot of people go into like renting. I see a lot of people going to properties where they're like actual people living there, not more like a commercial. Do you think that more of a commercial aspect, like owning, you know, exactly what you're talking about, like storage units? Do you think that's a little safer? Do you think that's better? Less hassle?
We tried renting a property. It was.
I'm sure it's a pain in the ass.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think I'm going to get canceled before I'll get canceled for this? Men are just like, we rented a property. We had a home we rented. I think we had 2 renters over a year and a half. People, no one knows how to fix anything, and it's not their job, I guess, to fix it. But we would get calls. The property is a couple hours away because we moved to it. It was our home in Detroit. We moved to the west side of Michigan. We just didn't sell our home. We rented it. we'd get a call about like a raccoon or a squirrel in the attic, and I'd be like, well, like tell your husband to go kill the squirrel. I mean, he's scared of squirrels. And so you got to drive over there with a BB gun or a trap, a squirrel trap, and you have to do it. If there's a hole in the roof, so it was and some people do great with that. Some people home flip. One of my buddies that manages our car wash that I do some deals with. That's what he does. Michigan Home Solutions. He flips homes for a living. Yeah. But it's that, to my mind, I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for a way to basically use other people's money to make money, like an investment. Where renting homes or flipping homes is a job, and you can do great with it, but that has to be your job. For this, I'm trying to think of more things where, you can do your bodybuilding. You can take what money you make into bodybuilding and what extra you have, rather than save it or, because it's not like we have 401ks in bodybuilding. So it's up to us to take the money we make and figure out a way to make money for us when we're done with bodybuilding.
I've never, I would consider Jay a pretty good friend. I've never spoken to him about more of his business aspects. I'd love to sit down and talk to him about it. I know that when he first came out, I believe to Vegas, I believe he bought a few properties. Jay can, I'll talk to him.
Henderson, he'll tell me. When he was still really young and developing,
Yeah, he was really really into that from the get-go, which I think is, when you look at Jay's career, the bodybuilding, and, he's a great speaker, and he goes out and communicates everyone well, and he's able to touch a lot of fans, and he's able to show face. He does an amazing job at that. But I think that overall, if you look at the bigger picture, like, what was he doing outside of bodybuilding? What was the investments that he was doing when he was young, when he was getting those chic, the chic sponsorships and the weeder stuff, and he was making moves when he was, probably not even Ronnie, that when it was him and Ronnie. He's already made moves before then, so I'd love to talk to him, pick his brain a little bit.
I would too. Yeah, I've talked to him briefly. I think, as far as like an idol in the sport, as far as business wise, he is 100%. And I don't want to I'd like to get more into business with this podcast, but I know most of our people are still bodybuilding people, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I think that's just a world I didn't know existed. As someone who came from a blue collar background, like I said, my dad was a pipe fitter. My mom eventually became a nurse. All I knew of was income, and if you didn't have a pension, you're basically screwed, because even investing in a 401k really isn't enough anymore these days. And so, things that I just didn't know existed, basically, so this whole storage unit thing came from us, and not like $40,000 is chump change. That was tough. We say that was our down payment for a home. That was a big deal. We saved for years for that. But that $40,000 on that property we still own the property, and we just recently had an offer for $400 on it, and so that's basically, we spent $40K on it. We've made $40K now just in actual income at this point, owning it for 5 years, and we turned down an offer for $400. These are things I just I had no idea even existed, and so there's and these are things that are ideal for the sport, because the store, I go there twice a year, like when we have to auction off a new kid or someone, stops paying on a unit. It's
what we talked about. Like this doesn't exist anymore. These contracts with magazines and, Weeder and whatnot, and they just don't exist anymore. So I think it's really important. Joe's a pro. I'm still an amateur, trying to get that card. It's important to make these moves, because at the end of the day, we can train, we can be a coach, we can do in-person training, online, things like that. Win a show, win $20,000 here, $100,000 here. But it's really important to think more long-term. And I think this is a really good,
because the sport is not care about you long-term. They're not. They don't care about you long-term.
Yeah, because I guess it used to be back in the day. You even amateurs were getting contracts. You come up and you get a call, and Weeder wants to put you in their magazine, so you're stuck with them, or whoever wanted to put you in their magazine or give you a contract, and that's a 6-figure contract. I mean, shoot, $50,000 in the '90s and stuff would have been huge. So it just doesn't exist anymore.
Weeder got crap because he, for not paying the guys more, but people kind of, be careful what you wish for, because it was really
doesn't exist anymore.
Oh yeah, and there's more money in the sport than there's ever been. It's just peripheral now. It's just not competing. So if you love the sport and this is what you want to do, you really got to be open to ideas on how you'll be able to keep doing it, you know, and make money from it long term. And that's just one way, there's lots of ways. And over the episodes, we'll talk about, like how you can make money coaching or with personal training or
other topics,
or even ebooks. Like Jay's with his ebooks. Kai did with ebooks too. Because you write them once and they make money forever.
Kai, dude, he did that thing for a little bit, and I know Joe. I think you had seen this one where Kai was promoting like $1 ebooks, all different body parts.
Think about how many people view or like one of your posts. You get 1,000 likes on one of your posts. That means those 1,000 people will buy $1 ebook. Yeah. So that post now made you $1,000.
Yeah. It's $1,000 and it's done. It's done. It's just going to keep trickling money.
Yeah. And in 10 years, I wrote Comprehensive Performance Nutrition in 2008. It still sells a copy or two a week. I mean, it's been 14 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think that, speaking about the business aspect, obviously what we're trying to angle this podcast at, and we're going to hit sort of micro topics of different scenarios of earning money in business and whatnot every week. So if you guys thought that was interesting, or we need to expand upon that little aspect of commercial, sort of real estate and stuff, just comment below. Let us know what you guys think about that. If you've had experience doing that yourself, or maybe even a bad experience, something we all can learn from, we can benefit from, definitely, say it below and whatnot. Segueing a little bit more into the bodybuilding aspect of the Bodybuilding Business podcast. Just wanted to talk about, we have Joe here. Joe, you're in Ottawa currently, right? Yeah. So you're up in Ottawa.
Yep.
For those guys who haven't seen recently, Joe turned pro in 2019, correct? And, he's placed top 3 at some pro shows, and just came off Toronto. Didn't exactly have the look he wanted. It was more of his body was a little fatigued. So he's going and rebuilding, and he's now going to be working with Justin as well. So, Joe, if you want to tell us a little bit about that, your next show.
And Joe's close. I think Joe I think he's he penalized from being Canadian, like so many people are. Because I think Joe's things don't reflect his physique. I think Joe's absolutely. We were talking about in episode 1 with how Rulli didn't have the right quad sweep or something. Most people have that one thing that holds them back. I don't believe Joe's really, really symmetrical. There's no lagging body parts, no genetically weak, no poor structure body parts.
Joe, not to be weird, man, but dude, the first time I saw you, I was like, I think I was looking at you were doing like a hands on hip most muscular, and I looked at you from the side, and just the density of your chest and your delt sticking out. I was like, oh. I mean, because I'm not a small guy either, but I'm like, oh, there's levels to this. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, for me, when I first started competing, I felt like my legs and my arms developed the quickest. And then, as I progressed, my back was something that caught up a lot. And then when it did, it kind of became more of a dominant pose for me, doing my back poses, the double bi and the back lat. But yeah, I don't feel I feel like that myself. I feel like my physique is pretty complete. And when I really nail it, it's that's when it shows it the best, I feel, because if I come in off, then it just it usually just sort of emphasizes my midsection being wider and stuff. So it's if I'm not on my 100% in condition and nail it, then I feel like that's when those areas just
so you feel like you have to be full, you have to bring that full look, or
full and really good conditioning, because I feel if I have any issues with bloating or anything like that, then it just emphasizes your stomach not being under control as much, and I feel like that's something that I've been dinged for. If anything, competing was just in between the poses, not controlling the midsection as much and things like that. But yeah, I also think being, not quite as, well known as some of the other guys, it takes a few years for them to kind of reward you. And it's if you show up off, if you're someone who's well known, Like I feel like those guys can
Yeah.
show up off and still get in the first call up, but for me, if I'm off, they'll just like they'll brush me off because they're like,
Yeah, if
okay,
you're
he's
not
off,
known,
like, and he's
you
not
can't even
really
just. It's not even
like
about being
an
on. If
Olympia
you're
guy
not
yet.
known, you have to be like shockingly on to kind of get noticed, which
Yeah. Like,
sucks. But
bam. Like, wow.
yeah. What do you weigh on stage, Joe? Roughly. Yeah.
On
What? Yeah.
stage.
What's your competition weight?
Um, Usually I'd say roughly to 265,
Yeah.
268.
I knew it. Yeah, I knew
I
about
think
what you
like
weighed. I just
actually
wanted to
like
say that because in episode 1 we kind of talked about like how far bodybuilding has come and how it kind of gets a bad rap. Like guys in the '90s were so amazing.
Talking about the amateur level to where it is
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah, it's not that I kind of knew what you weighed, and I knew it was around what
oh
Dorian
yeah.
weighed, you know, and it's like that.
it's crazy. It was doing
People
like
don't
250s,
realize
260s.
how far. Yeah, 260, so like
Yeah,
253.
biggest.
But that's what that's the thing. It's like people talk about the '90s and kind of with like rose-colored glasses, and it's like the guys today are insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, do you think there's what, I mean, obviously, a lot of our listeners aren't going to be professionals. I'm not a professional yet either. What is the biggest hurdle to going from amateur to professional? I'm not talking getting the pro card. I'm talking like, hey man, I want to look like a pro. I want to the whole, when you walk into a room, people go, oh, like that's a pro type thing. What do you think? Like, was it the food? Was it the training? Was it the supplementation? What was the biggest thing to get you to that point where you actually looked and resembled? Because you're always a big boy, but how did you get to that point?
Um, Honestly, I think it's a time thing. Like I feel like more than anything. Because like yeah, like for me, like when I first started competing, like I did my first show at 20, I was like 230
Yeah,
pounds
that's
when I
not
competed,
small.
right? So I wasn't small. And then I think like over time, like you said, like
Yeah.
when you saw me in person, it's like that density. I think it just
Yeah.
took time to develop that density, and like obviously the way I train, being more of a high
Yeah.
intensity than high volume type training. So I feel like that helps too, with like building
Yeah.
that density more than the volume training. So I know Jay liked the volume training, but I kind of like I do like two main work sets, and then I consider all the other sets up to that just feel sets. And then I'll add in like
Yeah.
intensifiers like
Feel it
as I
out.
feel the need to, whether it's a drop set, like cluster set, rest pause, all that kind of stuff. So I honestly think it's yeah, like it was more of a time thing than anything specific. Like, I don't think it's necessarily like oh like to do with like the drugs or anything either, because like I think like now like I've used less
And
in my last couple preps than I used like even like to become a pro. So I found like I found like the amount
stick
that
with
kind
it.
of works, and then I feel like the things around that are it's just the time factor that kind of takes like I feel like it takes you about like a good 10 years, or it depends on the person, but I felt like it took me from when I started at 20 until like I was like 20, I'd say 26, like after about 6 years of competing, then like I felt like my physique was like getting to that point where I
Yeah.
could be a pro and be a competitive pro. And I just think it came down to a time factor, like
Yeah.
I think it takes time to develop
Yeah.
that level.
With the drug thing, because we're probably already people are probably already furiously typing, hey, he's lying. What people don't realize is no one's saying they don't work or that they're not
Yeah.
needed. What people don't realize is there is a limiting factor.
Yeah.
So what they do is they increase the amount of protein synthesis. They allow you to grow faster, allow you to recover faster. But primarily, they increase the amount of protein that you eat that gets converted into muscle tissue, which can only happen if you're eating enough and
Yes.
training hard enough. And what happens? People, what happens when the doses get higher? The response curve kind of skews in the wrong direction, and above a certain dose, you just feel more lethargic, more
Lose your
tired.
appetite.
You lose your appetite, and then even worse, you can get things like test
Yep.
flu
Yep.
and stuff. And so you can take everything in the world, but if you have the flu, you can't eat, and you're too tired to train, you're not going to
Yep.
grow. And that's what people don't realize. It's when people are saying that, they're not saying they did it natural or anything. They're saying that there's more to the picture than just because and if you can take you know, a ton of stuff and have none of that happen to you, great, awesome. But that's not what happens.
Yeah, and
You know, you get to a certain point.
say it again, Justin.
Go ahead. Well, you just get to a certain point, and like the negatives outweigh the positives. You know, again, if you're lethargic, you're exhausted, you can't, you know, you're too tired to train, you feel like you have the flu, and you can't eat. You know, you can't make muscle out of thin air. You have to go to the gym and you have to eat. You know,
and it's nowadays, and I know everyone talks about it. You know, we used to have, I'd say like 2010, around that time, there was the whole fake natty era. Right? Are you natural? Are you not natural? Oh, well, this guy's lying. Well, no, this guy's telling the truth. I mean, really, Lee Priest was one of the first guys to ever come out and be like, hey, you know, hey, I do this, I do that. You know, he was one of the first guys that was sort of vocally like saying it. And I think now it's turned into the whole, oh, well, I only do 250 tests, you know, and I only do this and that. It's like, look, man, they work. People do different doses. People have different reasonings, and everyone can handle different things. And, you know, there's a smart way to do it. There's a dumb way to do it. But, you know, to say that they don't work is stupid. They definitely work. But when I feel like society and especially the niche sort of bodybuilding culture that we're in has developed, like, what's the easy shortcut? What's the easy way to get it? You know, well, maybe, you know, and everyone talks about, oh, it's trend. You know, what's the easy way to get big? And that's why I wanted to ask Joe, like, hey, man, what is really the difference? And people don't want to hear it. Oh, it took time. Oh, it took time. You know, like, oh, I had to eat chicken and rice and broccoli and spinach and whatnot. Oh, not only for 6 months or 6 weeks and 12 weeks for a prep. Oh, I had to do it every day for like 10 years.
You want to know the difference? There's a video of Nick Walker's birthday party. And they're having it at some restaurant, right? And they're at a big restaurant. Everyone's at the table. Everyone's ordering food. Nick Walker's middle of the off season. No show, no prep in sight, no anything. You know, far off season, nothing matters. It's his birthday. What does he do? He pulls out a Tupperware of his chicken and rice on his birthday at a restaurant where they're throwing, you know, and that's what people don't want, you know, and
it's not fun.
And people can refuse to believe it. Yeah, and that's fine because it's, look, everyone's using stuff, and so if you think everyone at the gym is doing the same exercises, there's only you do pressing movements for chest, you do rowing for back. There's only so many movements, so everyone's doing the same workout, you know. So and then most guys are training hard, and then everyone's using the same stuff, and so. You know, like the difference maker are those small things, and that's, you know, we talked about Paul Dillette the other day too. You know that's the difference maker. You want to know why Nick Walker is Nick Walker? I mean, aside from his genetics, and it's not because he takes more, because there's some guys got a lot of money, and there's some guys that have no will to live.
Yes, they're willing to do anything.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, but the thing that the willing to do anything, what you need to be willing to is bring your chicken and rice to your own birthday party in the middle of
But that's tough love, man. People don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that. That's too easy.
I know.
That's not the hard. Easy way out, Justin. Come on, man. You're getting too old. You got to be hip with the people nowadays. And I think, so Joe, you know, we want to know, though. We want to get your face out there. We want to, you know, compete in more shows. Definitely going to start competing in more shows in the future coming up, getting that peak right. But what show do you think is next? What do you think? Yeah, what do you? I mean, it doesn't have to be like solidified. Just, you know, throw it out there. Okay.
Probably Indie Pro. I think I'd start with the Indie Pro because like I wanted to aim for like the shows in May and just have a few shows lined up in my mind so that, like, you know, in the ideal scenario, it's like, you know, I win one of the shows and then qualify and then have a bit of a break and then prep for the Olympia. That's kind of like my mindset with that. So like right now I'm just, you know, finishing up like the current phase of giving my body a break before I, you know, start to push things again. And then, that's kind of
shows in America, right?
Because I want to do those spring shows and, like Indy, Cali, New York, and then probably like I would still want to try and do Toronto again just for some redemption, but definitely want to do the state
I think
shows
that
for sure.
That'll be interesting because Indy's in May, and Justin, I think we're either going to do USA's and North Americans next year, so that'll be like July
That's what I was
August.
just going to ask. Which one is it? Are you going both?
We'll have to decide.
USA?
You know, like
It's tough. You know, like there's sort of patterns. It seems like USA tends to. I hate to say this because it's not always true. Tends to reward West Coast guys more.
could be.
But then when every time I say that, then there's like an East Coast guy that wins. But kind of more traditionally, Nationals is for like the East Coast, West Coast. USA is for the West. Nationals is kind of also. It seems like that's like the big name show. Like the guy that's had the
talk about Nationals.
The year
yeah,
comes in
he won Nationals. Yeah.
Yeah.
USA sort of seems to get pushed a little bit, even though it's a prestigious title. It seems to get pushed a little bit because it's like that's like the first big turning pro show in July.
Yeah.
Then they got North Americans. So now you got like 8 other guys that turn pro, and then now everyone's hyping like those guys are done with, and now everyone's hyping Nationals at the end of the year, and then that's sort of the momentum you carry because that's the last show. So everyone's talking about who won Nationals.
It used to be. COVID kind of changed everything, but it used to be like USA's was either because the LA Championships used to be the week before USA's for years, and that was like that was back when everyone trains at the Gold's Gym in the Mecca, Gold's Venice, and so you knew those guys with the magazines. The guy that like the LA Championships was basically a national show, and so you won the LA Championships, and then you went on and you won the USA's because everyone knew that, or you won the Junior Nationals. Made the big name for yourself, and then went like Phil Heath, won Junior Nationals, and then went on to win USA's. But then COVID with how it changed the time all the shows were now. There's like now real standard consistency anymore. It's kind of changed, but yeah, it seems like the West Coast guys tend to win USA's more often, but not not always. And it might because John like the promoters are from different areas of the country, so it makes a little sense.
Yes, I mean we might hit North Americans. We'll see, but. Yeah, definitely want to nail down that card next year. But you guys
You're going
light heavy. I'm a middleweight.
You gonna make weight?
Yeah. No, I think I'm. Oh God, I think I did the guest posing and I was holding a ton of water. I mean, I'm in the 280s right now, like low 280s, like 281, 282. But I feel it. I know Joe's like a lean 280 and I'm like, a puffy 280, but it's rough, man. But it's fun. You get to push a ton of weight. I did the 150s today, for pressing, and it was like warm up. And that's always a good feeling, when you're off season.
For the people that might because if we have a bodybuilding audience, they might not know powerlifting. John is the former all-time world record holder at 242 powerlifting. Literally one of the strongest men to ever walk the earth. He's real humble about it. He's not like one of those guys that bragged about it with big social media presence. But John is not just freakishly strong amongst freakishly strong people.
Back in the day, man, I think I was done. I started powerlifting when I was like, my God, I think I started at 19 at Virginia Military Institute, and Monty Sparkman was coaching me, and it was one of those things where, and he had squatted 1,000, and this was time when single ply was still a thing, and multiply was still a thing, and that was the only thing. Raw lifting did not exist. No one was doing raw lifting in 2008, 2009, and before that, it was more like WPO at the Arnold Classic and stuff like that with Steve Goggins and all the guys, and so those were the guys I looked up to, Dave Tate and all them, and seeing, being able to become friends with Steve later on, and that was awesome. But yeah, that was, I just wanted to powerlift to squat. I was like, I want big legs. Let me squat. And I walked up to the guy, Monty Sparkman. I was like, I used to do some bodybuilding, this and that, lifting at the gym, whatever. And he looked at me, he's like, we don't do that. I was like, oh, okay. So, learned how to squat and all that stuff. And, honestly, I was in USAPL and competing IPF, drug tested multiple times a year. And I was benching paused raw for like almost like 470, pretty much like 475, almost 500. I was like 21 and it was raw, like in a t-shirt and, drug tested. And it was one of those things where I was like, man, I guess I'm pretty good at this. So maybe I should keep trying. And, that's, after I made IPF teams and world teams and was setting American records, natural in my weight class, I was like, I'm sort of reaching you know, my potential-ish. You know, I'm sure I could have gone a little bit more, but I was like, you know, pull 800 natty and stuff. I was like, but let me go on the other side, and I want to accomplish some other goals. So that was sort of the route I took. But
what was your high total? What were your best?
I mean, in training, you know, the lifts are always more. I mean, I was doing no knee sleeves. Like, I mean, just wearing like a belt. I was doing like quarter squats, training like half squats. We would train with, which is almost parallel. We were doing that with like 900 plus. I weighed like 230, and I was the most I did in knee wraps was I was repping like 810 in knee wraps. I weighed like 235 or something. So when I did that, and I did like sort of the Ronnie squat with just knee wraps on, it was like such a moment for me that was like, oh my God, I did it, you know? But I didn't look like Ronnie. So for everyone out there saying, oh, you know, you just take this, and everyone looks at it like, dog, I didn't look like Ronnie when I was squatting 810.
Ronnie had an intersingle.
Yeah, he did. He did. Got to get my big legs in it. But yeah, man, that was honestly, I don't miss it. I enjoyed the time with it. Bodybuilding has been such a challenge, but I was lucky to thank my parents that I have the structure to do bodybuilding, because it's one of those things where you either have it or you don't. And you know, I had to put on a lot of size, but I was very thankful. I came away with no injuries. That was one of the things. A lot of the guys I competed with, you know, awesome guys, but they've had many surgeries, biceps, pecs, knees, back, surgeries, injuries that I never ended up getting. I lifted smart. I lifted with good form. I didn't stay in the sport maybe like 6-7 years, so it wasn't like terribly long. But I was able to do what I wanted to do, and when I beat Dan Green and I set the all-time world record, it was like, what's next? You know, what do I do? Go after the record again and possibly risk? Because at that time, I started getting the tweaks. I started getting like, man, I'm 26. You know, like I'm squatting. All of my squat workouts were above 700. Every single time we went in the gym to squat, it was over 700. Every bench workout I did was over 400. We never went below 400 for a long time. And every deadlift workout was almost 800. I mean, you do that over and over, and it's like, it's not, you know, yeah, we would do higher volume, lower rep stuff, but dude, you just got so beat up, and I was like, man, I want to try something different. So I sort of wish I'd.
What was your all-time world record?
I went 6 for 9 that day, so it wasn't a very good day. But it was around 2,100. It was around a little under 2,100. Yeah, so I think I could have gone closer to 2,150 if I had had the day I wanted. But yeah, so that was cool. Yeah, that was definitely cool. I think that I see Joe doing a lot of deadlifts. Justin, you were an insanely heavy trainer with Kuklo, you know, back in the day and stuff like that. I remember watching. I was a kid in a small country town, and we just had gotten we didn't have internet yet. Like we had like dial up, but we had one of those things we had to buy to hit the satellite and like have it come back. So it was super patchy. But I stole enough gigabytes from my parents' account that I was able to watch. It was like 2006, 7, where I was watching you and Steve, and you were squatting with briefs on and just repping like 6 plates, 7 plates. I was like, man, one day I want to be that strong and stuff. And I think strong lifting definitely transfers over. Having a base, seeing Joe pull 8 plates and stuff like that, I'm like, oh my God. You know, like, sure, I'd done that before in the past, but I think it transfers over to the physique in bodybuilding. Something that...
Oh, absolutely. There's name a very large bodybuilder who's not incredibly strong. Even Cutler, you know, there's
like nothing.
Repping 405 on incline, you know, 405 in bent over rows. There's really 2 types of muscle growth. There's the standard. Throughout history, they always thought there was myofibular growth, which is actual, you know, increased protein structures on the contractile tissue of the muscle, you know, that make the muscle fiber thicker. But then you think, well, why are powerlifters not the most muscular humans on Earth? Why are bodybuilders more muscular? Well, it turns out and I think the consensus is that this is absolute now, but there's something called sarcoplasmic muscle growth, which is everything other than the contractile fiber. And what that means is, you know, like take a pound of steak. That's muscle. It's a pound of muscle. If you dehydrate it down to beef jerky, you're left
Yes.
with the actual muscle tissue, the contractile tissue, a tiny, tiny amount. Only about 30% of the steak is actual muscle tissue, contractile tissue. The rest is everything else: the blood vessel capillary density, the glycogen storage, water, and so the pump training, I think, facilitates that sarcoplasmic growth, maximizes that. But the myofibular growth is still rooted in whether or not there's tension on the muscle that requires that muscle tissue to increase the amount of amino acid structures on it to thicken it and strengthen it. And I think there's a look that comes with it. Like there's like a Flex Wheeler or something is it's a like a very like pleasing, beautiful, like amazing, like Greek god type of look, and it's round and full Phil Heath, But I think there's something just extra impressive about or a different kind of. You can tell who lifts heavy. You can look at Ronnie Coleman and
density,
know he was strong. You can look at Brad Warren and know he lifted heavy.
Like
just slightly different.
There's
look.
a graininess, like, and everyone talks about, and they'll be like, I think Phil was talking about it on another podcast, like, and we all see it, like, oh, white guys get really grainy, and normally the black dudes have, or like, Hispanic people like myself, like, we're more bubbly and round and stuff like that. But Ronnie sort of defied those odds. Like, he just changed it, and he was like, because he was just as grainy and insane as anyone had ever seen.
Yeah, there's just a different look. It looks like there's some guys that look like you poke them and they'd be kind of squishy, and there's like a Ronnie or something that looks like you could poke them and it would just
like it's a granite rock, like it's just like a Branch Warren. It's just absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, Branch Warren is a perfect example, and I'm going to say this, and it's not going to sound disparaging, and it's 100% not. It's the opposite. It's Branch Warren is always known for his conditioning, and I think his conditioning was largely a byproduct of his training, his insane intensity and heavy, hard training. And anyone can do this. Google Branch Warren rear double bicep, and there will be a bunch of videos that pop up. Look at his lower back and his upper glutes, like that whole region, and you'll see that you can see he looks insanely grainy. He looks like a block of granite, and you can see that there's still some fat there. And I don't say that. I hate even saying this because it sounds like he wasn't in shape. Branch was always in shape, but you can see also his midsection. You can see he wasn't necessarily leaner than everyone else. If you actually really study it, look at his lower back and a rear double bi, you'll see. Not that he was out of shape.
He was in shape.
Always in shape. Branch was never out of shape. Yeah, but he was in shape like everyone else. But he looked way better.
Like it was a next level condition.
Grainier and leaner than everyone else. It looked like he was better conditioned, and I think that came from his training. Because I think if you did a body fat measurement, he would be the same as most of the other top guys. He looked leaner and looked grainer, and I think that comes from there's a look that happens with that. Because you can think what's happening. So you get a guy with sarcoplasmic growth, so his muscles are just as big. But what is that sarcoplasmic growth? It's water. It's blood vessels. It's not actual hard protein structures. Where Branch, a higher percentage of his muscle tissue is going to be made up of that myofibular growth from that hard, heavy training, and that is going to be a harder, denser.
So, what are you saying that? And I think we've talked about this before, but for everyone listening, when someone says, "Oh, I'm going to add a certain amount of muscle," no. Like you're adding stage weight. You're not necessarily adding just like dense muscle tissue, right? Is that what you're trying to?
Well, yeah. There's just different. What is a muscle? If I cut my bicep out of my arm and it was just sitting here, that's muscle, right? It's my bicep muscle. But only about 30% of it is actual muscle tissue, contractile tissue. You myosin and actin, the contractile tissues that actual cross each other to cause the muscular contraction. The rest of it is everything else that makes up a chunk of meat: water, glycogen, blood vessels, capillary density, arterial. How much, and so those things all come from like pump training. There's things that's like sarcoplasmic growth, and it's not really well understood. But you get beef jerky. It's a small little piece. That's the actual tissue that you've added. Amino acid structure. The rest is everything else, and so you can imagine if you take a pound of muscle tissue and then and say that it's 30% actual contractile tissue. You take that same pound and make it 45% actual contractile tissue. That's going to look, you know, if 45% of it is the beef jerky part as opposed to only 30% of it, it's going to have a different look. It's going to have a harder look on stage. And I think that only comes from hard, heavy training. And so, you know, you need everything, because if all it took was hard, heavy training, then someone like Larry Wheels would be Mr. Olympia. You know, you can see the difference and look between like an in-shape powerlifter versus an in-shape bodybuilder. So you need the sarcoplastic stuff. But there's some type of additional look. That's the reason Dorian Yates won. That's the reason Ronnie was Ronnie. You know, that's the reason Branch Warren, despite his genetic deficiencies, was, you know, probably a Hall of Fame bodybuilder.
That's super interesting because, you know, you see people sometimes, you don't want to say anything, but it's like, hey, man, you know, you didn't add, you know, like, oh, before and after, you know, I added 10 pounds of muscle. Like, okay, well, you know, but.
Well, that's the other thing that's really, when people like get kind of like 10 pounds of actual stage
that's
muscle,
an insane amount.
Like
that's insane.
Yeah. You know, that's what I was expecting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. 10 pounds. Like if Joe added 10 pounds of muscle, it would look like a different person, you know? You know, and so that's like, you know, when people say, you know, they want to add 30 pounds on a cycle, or, you know, it's, people don't realize. Well, here's another example. I'll bring Nick Walker up again. Nick Walker probably grew faster than any human on earth. You know, like when people, it's this, and this as a coach is difficult because people want to gain weight so fast, you know. Nick Walker did his first show in like 2012. So 10 years later, you know, he's competing right now at 120 pounds bigger than he was his first show. That sounds like, well, geez, that's a ton of muscle, right? And it is. Yeah. But that's 12
1 pound a month.
That's 1 pound a month. That's 0.25 pounds per week on average, you know? And so guys think they're going to gain 30 pounds in an 8-week cycle, you know? No, the fastest, Nick Walker might have grown faster
and he's only putting on,
history,
you know, 0.2,
Yeah, 0.25 pounds a week, yeah. And so that, you know, which is what, 2 pounds in an 8-week cycle, you know? So if you give some guy in some 8 weeks, like the old Paul Borenson cycles where you say you're going to gain 60 pounds, it's like, no, the fastest human growth in history was 2 pounds during that. And that's what people need to understand. And Joe kind of came back at the start of this when he talked about the time, you know? That's what people don't want to understand is we look at this like this short time span of thing, and that's not what it is. This sport is not doing everything perfect for a short period of time. And I always say the way to progress in this sport is being 90% perfect 100% of the time. And that's what's going to pay off long term, as opposed to being 100% perfect 90% of the time. You got to do the big, you got to eat meat and rice, meat and potatoes, eggs and oatmeal. You got to do it for decades. You got to go to the gym and train good, train hard. You got to do it for a decade. You got to cycle, but you got to cycle smart. You got to do it for a decade. Nothing happens short term. And that's the hardest thing in sport, and it's hard as a coach, because a guy will sign up for you, want to work with you for a month, and want to know why they don't look like Nick Walker in a month. It's like, well, you know, that's a month. We're talking, you know, 1 pound of muscle growth, and 1 pound doesn't mean anything, because I've changed weight more than 1 pound 5 times today. You know, I'm drinking a Diet Mountain Dew right now. This weighs 2 pounds. So at the start of the podcast versus the end of the podcast, when I finish this, I'll have gained 2 pounds. You know, in an hour. You know, we're talking.
Do you guys remember
a month? You know, and then probably the month turns into Nick Walker.
It's probably how it started. Arthur Jones, Casey Viator, Colorado experiment, and you know, Casey had he had won Mr. America at the time, and he had an accident where he like lost one of his fingers or something, and you know, and then Arthur Jones invited him out and was like, hey, I'm gonna put this weight back on you, whatever, and you know, there's parts of that story where they say he used to sneak back in. You know, because if you guys don't know about the story, Arthur Jones, who invented Nautilus equipment, brought Mr. America at the time, or Casey out, and he trained him. He's like, hey, I'm going to get you back in shape. He trained him, and I believe it was like 30-minute sessions. It was pretty much the beginning of the high-intensity training where you would pretty much do 1 set to failure. Like 1 set of squat to failure, 1 set of leg extension to failure. And he was able to put back in, what was it, like a month or 2 months, 8 weeks or something. He put back on all his size. Pounds, He was down like 60 pounds or whatever. You know, and now some people say he snuck in at night and did more volume and whatnot. Who knows? But at the end of the day, it wasn't like he started out that big. He just lost the weight and sort of put it back.
Yeah, that's Yeah, I have an example of Ben Pollock. He was trying to make 181 to make U.S. Open, and he ended up doing a men's physique competition at 181. And I think we gained 81. We put 81 pounds on him in 10 weeks when I first worked with him. He's not working with me anymore. I think he's working with Shelby Starnes now. But at the time, well, he didn't really gain 81 pounds. He had been walking around at 230 trying to make 181. And then he dieted down, over dieted, lost a lot of size for this men's physique competition. And then we were just gaining it back plus some extra fullness. And that's fun as a coach because you can do that with guys. Paul Barnett, who runs Anabolic Bodybuilding, a great YouTube channel if anyone wants to check it out. He gained like 90 pounds his first year with me. But his 90 pounds was coming off a long layoff where he became a parent, stopped training, got really fat. Then we dieted it down for a show, over dieted. His metabolism went haywire, lost some size. And then we had a great productive off season. And he gained 90 pounds but a lot of it was regained weight. A lot of it was weight he lost by being over dieted. A lot of it was excess fullness. And that's great as a coach because you can make these awesome things. But and those things really and I got misled as a kid myself because I thought, guys were gaining 80 pounds in 6 weeks. But if you really take a step back and think about things, it's like, well, if guys are gaining 30 pounds every 8 weeks, why is no one 13,000 pounds? Because there's been a lot of 8-week periods in the last 10 years, It's like, you got to do the math. The largest bodybuilders ever are around 300 pounds, and it took them 20 years to get there.
Guys, if you're listening, do not get upset if you do not put on 30 pounds in freaking 8 weeks, okay? That's what we're trying to say. Chill out, stay the course, grind, do what you got to do. Do not get upset at your coach if you do not put on 30 pounds in 8 weeks.
And there's more to the story, too. Like you said when you saw Joe the first time, that thickness. There's a 3D look that develops at the same weight. That's hard to explain, and I've never really been able to explain it well. But I remember it happening to me as I progressed towards the end of my career because, I weighed around 280 in the off season for like 3 or 4 years in a row. But each year it was a completely different look, and it's like this 3D look starts to happen. Where you're not adding a lot of weight, but somehow, because, like Joe's 265 on stage, it's like there's lots of guys at the gym that weigh I weigh 265 right now, not in shape, obviously, but Joe and I look like two different species, And there's a thing that happens when you spend enough time in the game, and you spend enough time being lean, where the scale weight doesn't change as much. Well, you can go to any state show and there'll be an in shape super heavy that's 235, and that 235 looks nothing like there's a bunch of pro bodybuilders like Max Charles. What's he weigh? 240, 245?
Yeah, he's a big guy. I've seen him in person, but
I don't know. But I'm just trying to think of. I'm trying to think of
Dexter,
like a smallish pro bodybuilder.
Dexter was what, 240s?
But not less than that even. But there's just there's a thing that happens, and it's like a 3-dimensional look that comes with time in the game. It's like maybe muscle maturity. I don't know what it is, but something happens where you don't really, because you reach a point where there's only so big you're going to get. You don't really keep increasing weight, but your look keeps improving, and you keep looking bigger. And I don't really have an explanation for it, but. In general, I just hate the scale. The scales ruin more physiques. The scales created more perma-bulkers. The scales created more women who are afraid to eat. The scales kind of ruin everything. Where the scale just doesn't
going into, sort of a scale topic in a different aspect. You guys are traveling soon, aka weighing your food, making sure everything, possibly gain a few pounds on the flight of fluid because it's moving around and whatnot. How do you guys, Joe, you go first. How do you guys sort of get ready for flying? If no one's flown, or if people have flown and not had good experiences with it and stuff, how do you guys usually handle traveling long distance stuff?
Usually, I don't know. Usually what I try and do, it depends on like where you're going, I guess you could say. But I usually try and figure out where I'm going. Obviously, and but where you're staying and the accommodations and stuff too. So it's if I know straight up, okay, I'm going to be staying at a hotel, then I'll probably try and make sure that I pack some food with me. If I'm only gone for a few days, that way it's at least you're going to mitigate how many times you have to eat out or do other things like that, and not really eat what you're normally eating. So I usually like the day I'm traveling, I try and like make sure I have all my meals for that day, and then even if I can, like if I have enough, room, depending on like how long I'm going for, I'll bring meals for the next day, or I'll try and find like a meal prep company in the area. That way I can get the meals for the weekend. Because like for me, like I live in Ottawa, and I don't fly, but I go to Toronto probably every month. And usually what I'll do when I'm there for the weekend is I'll just contact one of the meal prep companies and pick up my meals when I get there, and then I'm good for the weekend. So it just makes it easier that way. So you don't have to be like, oh, I don't have food, so I'm gonna go eat McDonald's,
Yeah,
or
try to sneak something.
whatever the case, right? So like it's easier way to keep your body kind of in the same routine too. Because I find like, yeah, with traveling, like traveling alone puts stress on your body. So like to eat a bunch of stuff you're not used to is just gonna put more stress on your body and make you feel like shit. So like that's why I try to keep it as close to what I normally would eat as possible. But like other than that, I don't find like
Yeah.
flying doesn't usually make me hold much water. So I don't have any issues with that because I usually don't eat like while I'm actually on the plane. Usually I'll just drink water on the plane or whatever, and then if I need to eat, I eat while I'm in the airport or in between flights. Because I find like if you eat while you're flying, I feel like that's what's like potentially going to mess up with like digestion or water retention and things like that, especially if you're eating a lot of carbs. So that's what I've noticed, anyways,
Yeah. What
from
about you, Justin?
my experience traveling.
You don't compete anymore, but when you did and stuff like that, what was your way you went about it?
Well, first of all, I want to say for anyone listening, anyone who wants to be a bodybuilder, wants to go far in the sport, you asked Joe a question: how do you handle traveling? What did Joe answer? Eating.
Yes.
And that's what we were talking about before. You didn't
Nope.
mention eating. You didn't ask how he handled food. And this is what I always say: Jim, like high school kids sit around and talk about their training. Gym rats sit around and talk about gear. Bodybuilders sit around and talk
So
about
true.
food. And that's a perfect example because you didn't mention food, you didn't ask food. You asked, how do you handle
Yep.
traveling? And Joe said, food. And that's what bodybuilding is. Bodybuilding is food. Yeah, so traveling, and my wife is like the best day of my wife's life, I think, is when I stopped competing because we have 4 kids. And traveling with 4 kids is
Yeah.
nothing compared to traveling with a bodybuilder. Because let's say, like you said, every meal is planned. You got it. Are you ordering a meal service prep? Are you having it delivered to the hotel? Are you having it delivered to the Airbnb? Are you flying with it? If you're flying, are you bringing any on your carry-on? Because they consider everything a liquid. If you bring peanut butter in your meals, they might consider that a liquid. 60% of the time it's getting through. 40% of the time it's not. And so are you traveling with your pack luggage? Are you putting it in a Yeti cooler? Are you putting ice in it? If you're doing that, are you duct taping it so it doesn't come open? But yeah, so the way I handle it typically is I would call the hotel and I would say that I was having food delivered.
Yeah, there
And back then
wasn't
there
not
wasn't
yeah
really a
not in the
food prep
2000s.
service.
No.
And so what we would do is we would not in the mid 2000s, no. I would over prepare. I'd bring some of my carry on, hoping it would get through. And like I said, about 60% of the time it would. About 40% of the time, some TSA asshole would think out my peanut butter
Yeah.
was C4 explosives and then confiscate my whole carry on food. But the times it got through, great. Then I had my food with me, and then I usually I'd bring a lot of pre-made packets of protein
Yeah.
powder and carb powder, like in Ziploc baggies, which again they would think was contraband. But if it got through, then I could mix that with water, and then I bring a checked luggage with food with like ice bags because it would make it once you get up because the cargo area of planes isn't heated or really pressurized, so it gets really cold. So that'll last, and then depending on how long I was staying, I would call the hotel. Back then there wasn't Airbnb, so it was just hotel. You call the hotel and say, hey, I'm staying these days. I'm having a shipment of perishables in. Was there a way I could get this shipped that it will be kept in some kind of cold storage, or do you have a restaurant freezer? And they would keep it there. And usually they're pretty good about it. But I would be pretty like triple redundancy. So I bring my some stuff in my carry-on, like powders in case my carry-on got confiscated, stuff in my checked luggage, and then stuff that got shipped to the hotel. So if two of the three got screwed, I would still have several meals, and then I could figure
Yeah.
out whether to, like how to get food when I got there. And I'd always check because like
Yeah.
you go to the West Coast, there's Albertsons. You go like the South, I think is Publix. you go in like the Midwest, it's Meijer. And so I would know, I knew all the major supermarket chains to know like where to go to get my food. Yeah, and like, but I just think that's like perfect, and I'm so glad that happened, because the guys listening that want to believe, like, if you want to be a bodybuilder, it's food. That's like, you're basically a food addict, and it's not good food. It's meat, but that was a perfect example, because you ask like, how do you travel?
Food.
And if you're a bodybuilder, your thought is, how do I cook my meals? Because every 3 hours I'm eating bodybuilding food. If I'm a bodybuilder.
So I believe that's going to wrap up most of it for this second episode of Bodybuilding Business with Bodybuilding, my friends. We covered a little bit of commercial real estate, some of Joe's future plans, some of mine, a little bit of story about me. Justin was able to elaborate a lot on, ownership of some commercial real estate and stuff. So if you,
let us know if you guys like that or are interested. You might think that's stupid and don't care at all. Get to the meathead stuff, and that's fine. We'll do what you guys want, But I think it's too many guys struggle in the sport financially for no reason, because you're sitting on it. If you compete, you're already like the top 5% of the population. You're sitting on a gold mine. You are in you're an elite of what you do. There's no reason to not monetize that. And
so any other topics you guys want us to cover, every week we're going to come at you guys with sort of a micro aspect of another way to make money, to support your family, to support the hobby, the sport that you're competing in, whether it be weightlifting, powerlifting, bodybuilding, horseback riding, whatever it is. So if you guys have any questions for us, or I guess any criticisms, we will take criticisms. We won't get upset. We won't cancel you guys. Just let us know below, and make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and help us grow. All right. So what do you guys think about that? Is that a good one?